Most people think a gold rush miner went broke because he never found gold. That happened. A man could spend months standing in freezing water, digging gravel until his hands split open, and still come up with nothing but black sand, sore bones, and a claim nobody wanted. But plenty of miners lost money in a stranger way. They found gold, then they still went broke. The trap was not always hidden in the river. Sometimes it had a counter, a scale, a barrel of flour, and a man smiling behind it. In the gold camps, the store could be more dangerous than the mine. A new miner arrived thinking the game was simple. Find a claim, buy tools, work hard, pull gold from the ground, go home rich. The old-timer knew better. Before a man could chase gold, he had to buy his way into the chase. He needed a pan, a shovel, a pick, boots, blankets, a tent or canvas, bacon, flour, beans, coffee, rope, candles, nails, tobacco, and enough supplies to survive until the ground paid him back. Every item had to be hauled across mountains, rivers, mud, snow, and bad roads. Every mile made it more expensive. Every rumor of a new strike made it worse. That was the first lesson of the mining camps. Gold fever did not just infect miners, it infected prices. A shovel in a city was one thing. A shovel in a remote gold camp was another creature entirely. It was not priced by metal and wood. It was priced by hunger, distance, panic, and hope. The merchant understood something the beginner did not. A miner with an empty stomach is not a negotiator. A man who tore his boot on sharp rock is not shopping around. A man who heard about a rich bar 2 valleys over will pay too much for anything that gets him moving before the crowd arrives. That is how a simple supply store became a machine for draining miners before the creek ever did. The great trick of the gold rush was that almost everyone was chasing the same dream, but not everyone was playing the same game. The miner gambled on the earth. The merchant gambled on the miner. And the merchant usually had better odds. The storekeeper did not need every man to strike it rich. He only needed every man to believe he might. That belief sold flour. It sold pans. It sold boots. It sold whiskey. It sold maps. It sold mule rides. It sold credit at the exact moment a desperate man should have been saying no. A beginner saw supplies as the first step toward wealth. An old-timer saw supplies as the first test. The wrong tool could cost more than its price. A cheap pan wasted hours. A weak shovel snapped when the ground turned hard. Bad boots ruined feet. Thin blankets made sleep impossible. A tent that leaked could turn a strong man into a fever case. A false map could send him 3 days in the wrong direction, burning food the whole way. In a mining camp, bad gear did not just fail, it charged interest. Every mistake ate time. Every lost day ate supplies. Every extra meal came from a sack that had to be bought again. Every delay pushed a man closer to the store counter, where prices waited like a second tax on failure. That was why camp economics broke men who were not lazy, foolish, or weak. They simply arrived late. The first wave into a rich area might find good ground. The second wave might still find something. The third wave often found crowded banks, worked over gravel, higher prices, and merchants who knew the newcomers were scared of missing out. That fear was profitable. A rumor could move a whole camp. One man heard that a creek was paying heavy. Another swore his cousin saw nuggets as big as beans. A teamster said the trail was rough but passable. A storekeeper just happened to have extra picks, extra flour, and a few maps for men who wanted to leave at dawn. By morning, half the camp believed the same story. Some rumors were true. Many were thin as smoke, but every rumor sold supplies. That was the second lesson. In a gold camp, information could be bait. The dangerous part was not only fake maps or dishonest claims. It was the way hope made every scrap of news sound urgent. A miner who moved slowly might lose the chance. A miner who moved fast might lose everything else. The old-timer learned to ask ugly questions. Who benefits if this rumor spreads? Who is selling the tools? Who owns the mule team? Who has flour stacked by the door? Who is leaving camp? And who is only talking loud in the saloon? Those questions saved money because they slowed the fever down. The newcomer heard a story and reached for his purse. The survivor heard a story and watched the seller. Credit was another trap. A miner low on cash could still be valuable to a storekeeper. Maybe he had a claim. Maybe he had tools. Maybe he had a partner. Maybe he had just enough pride to keep digging after the numbers stopped making sense. So the store extended credit. A sack of flour now. Payment when the claim paid. Bacon now. Boots now. Candles now. Tobacco now. A little whiskey now. It felt like survival. It felt like a bridge over a bad week. But if the claim stayed poor, credit turned into a rope. The miner worked to clear the bill. Then he needed more food to keep working. Then he owed more. The store had him coming and going. Supplies to search for gold. Dead if the search failed. more supplies to keep searching, more debt to keep breathing. That was not a dramatic robbery. It was slower, cleaner, written in a ledger. This is where the gold rush becomes less like a treasure hunt and more like a business lesson with mud on its boots. The men who understood costs had a chance. The men who only counted gold dust were already in trouble. A miner might brag that he pulled $20 in a week, but if food, tools, laundry, lodging, transport, and replacement gear cost $25, the creek had not paid him. It had entertained him while the store won. The old-timers had a rule for that, even if they did not write it down. A claim was not good because it had gold. A claim was good because it paid more than it consumed. That was the difference between a glittering failure and a living wage. A man could work a poor claim near camp and survive because supplies were close. Another man could find better color far away and still lose because every pound of flour had to be hauled in, every broken tool cost days, and every storm trapped him with a shrinking food sack. Distance was an invisible price tag. Bad roads were a price tag. Winter was a price tag. Sickness was a price tag. So was pride. Pride made men stay on bad ground because quitting felt like shame. Pride made them buy better-looking equipment than they needed. Pride made them gamble with food money. Pride made them pretend the ledger would turn around next week. The storekeeper did not need to defeat that pride. He only had to wait behind the counter. There were honest merchants in the mining camps. There were men who took risks hauling goods into brutal country and deserved profit for it. A storekeeper could lose money too. Wagons broke, animals died, goods spoiled, roads vanished in rain. Supplies could be stolen, burned, or stranded. But the system still favored the seller more than the dreamer. The seller could profit from every miner. The miner had to profit from one patch of ground. That imbalance is what made the camp store so powerful. It did not matter if 1,000 men arrived and only 50 found real pay dirt. All 1,000 needed to eat. All 1,000 needed tools. All 1,000 needed coffee. All 1,000 needed boots when the first pair gave out. The merchant sold certainty into a market built on uncertainty. That may be the most important lesson in the whole gold rush. The safest money was often made by serving the risk, not taking it. Laundry made money. Food made money. Transport made money. Lumber made money. Rooms made money. Tools made money. Entertainment made money. A miner might strike gold once. A store could strike miners every morning. The wise newcomer noticed that. He watched who was always busy. He watched who had cash at the end of the week. He watched which men controlled necessities. He watched which businesses survived even when claims failed. That did not mean every miner should become a merchant. It meant every miner had to think like one long enough to avoid being eaten by one. Before buying a tool, ask what job it actually solves. Before chasing a rumor, count the food it costs. Before taking credit, decide what happens if the claim stays dead. Before calling a price unfair, remember what it took to haul that item into camp. Before calling a claim rich, subtract the life required to work it. Those were not fancy rules. They were survival rules with numbers attached. The beginners who ignored them became easy marks for every camp trap. The miracle pan, the guaranteed map, the rich creek rumor, the expensive mule ride, the cheap boot, the store credit, the saloon loan, the partner who talked big and paid small. The old-timer did not have to be smarter than everyone. He only had to be harder to rush. That was why patience mattered. Not soft patience, hard patience. The kind that keeps a man from buying at the worst moment. The kind that lets a rumor cool overnight. The kind that checks a boot seam before the trail. The kind that asks whether a tool is needed or just comforting. Gold fever hated patience. Stores loved panic. A miner walking into camp with bright eyes and a full purse was a customer before he was a prospector. Every counter, wagon, and notice board knew it. The camp did not need to lie to him. It only needed to offer exactly what he wanted at exactly the moment he was least able to think. That is how men went broke in a place full of gold. Not always from bad luck. Not always from empty ground. Sometimes from paying too much to chase a rumor, borrowing too much to stay proud, buying too much to feel prepared, and forgetting that survival has a budget. The gold rush was not only a test of courage, it was a test of arithmetic. The man who survived counted beans before nuggets. He counted boot leather before miles. He counted candle stubs before night work. He counted debt before hope. And when the camp started shouting about a new strike, he counted who was selling shovels. That was the difference between a man who mined gold and a man who got mined by the camp. The store scam was not always one dishonest merchant with a fake map. It was the whole machine of urgency, distance, scarcity, credit, rumor, and pride. It turned dreams into purchases. It turned purchases into debt. It turned debt into more work. And it turned more work into another trip back to the counter. The smartest old miners learned the hardest truth early. Gold in the ground did not make a man rich. Gold he could keep did. And in many camps, keeping it was harder than finding it.